Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at Mars's upcoming opposition to Pluto. Mars is in the sign of Cancer and will be making an opposition with Pluto as it crosses that last anaretic degree of the sign of Cancer. Eventually, of course, Mars is going to retrograde in the sign of Leo and then back into Cancer and will then make the opposition to Pluto again. And then in forward motion in the spring, Mars will once more oppose Pluto. So we have a series of these oppositions coming. The first will take place across the Cancer-Capricorn axis. And so we're going to look at that today. And we're going to do some horoscopes. So the idea behind this is to just unpack the meaning of the whole sign houses that exist in opposition to one another. For example, if you're a Cancer rising, Capricorn's in the 7th, the Mars-Pluto dynamic will be across the 1st and the 7th houses. If you're a Capricorn rising, it's flipped, but the same house is active. So I'm going to take you through those pairings of houses through the 12 whole sign horoscopes today and give you some ideas about what to watch for. The reason for doing this now is that Mars is very slowly moving into the opposition and will be intensifying in the next couple of weeks. And I think it's good to start thinking about it now because it is a very significant and big transit between two often very cathartic and explosive planets. Mars and Pluto can be kind of nuclear. And so it's important to start thinking about where that's showing up in our lives now. Of course, it's going to look and feel different for everyone depending on the configurations of your birth chart, but this will at least give you some signs and clues and hints as to what's to come. So that's what we're doing today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, we thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the content. And also, we appreciate your subscription. We're trying to get to 80,000 subscribers on the channel, our next goal by the spring equinox. So help us get there. Let's see if we can continue building the community. And obviously, it helps us grow our business as well. We really do appreciate it. It's free to subscribe. Transcripts of any of my daily talks can be found on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. On the 17th of this month, coming up this week, I am giving a talk on the astrology of compatibility. It's called The Myth of Astrological Compatibility, What Everybody Gets Wrong About the Astrology of Relationships. I'm going to tell you what I think works and doesn't work when it comes to astrological compatibility techniques. That's this Thursday night. Join us 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. If you can't attend live, after you register, we give you the webinar link, but we also give you the recording in case you can't make it. The other thing I want to point you to is under the courses page, go to first year course. We've extended the early bird registration sale for both payment plans and upfront payments on the first year course page until Friday. We had a number of people that contacted us asking if we could extend to Friday because they get paid on Friday. So sure, we're happy to do that. So it'll be running until this early bird registration sale and discounts until Friday this week. If you want to join us to study astrology in our Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic first year course, it starts November 16th. Take advantage of these sale prices. And also need-based tuition is there if you're someone who could use a little help to make the program accessible financially. We have a sliding scale that people can use if they are on a fixed or limited income. We understand that things are difficult out there for some people. So if you need that help, please do apply and use it. We are glad to work with you and make sure that studying astrology is accessible for people. We believe that's important because it's a sacred, it's a sacred tool. It's a sacred science. And we feel like anyone should be able to learn about it if they really have a sincere desire to do so. All right, on that note, let us turn our attention to the real-time clock and let's take a look at Mars opposite Pluto. By the way, at the end of today's talk, if you stick around after I'm done, I'll be giving, there's an informational video about the course that I tag on after the content's done for the day. Okay, here we go. So we have Mars going into the opposition with Pluto. Now let's watch how this is going to develop. So once we get to within 3 degrees, it's game on. And that's when you're really going to start noticing things. It's about October 25th. And then we have, here is the 31st, Halloween, a little interesting signature for Halloween. And then we have Friday, November 1st, Saturday, November 2nd, and, oops, sorry, shifted houses here. And then you can really see it perfecting Sunday, November 3rd. So Sunday, November 3rd is when that transit is exactly opposite. And then we're going to see Mars move into the sign of Leo the next day. At which point, then it's election time, by the way. So it's interesting to see this happening right before the election. I not sure we have those October surprises that are part of the politics in the United States, and I am not would not be surprised to see this correlating with some big drama right before the election. Anyhow, Mars opposite Pluto is about confrontation with dark, subterranean, transformative forces. Often it is about the eruption of pent-up energy, and there are violent purgatorial discharges. There is a sense of almost like there's a long history of nuclear events associated with Mars Pluto. Not that I'm predicting anything like that necessarily, but Mars opposite Pluto is often associated with things that come up that we have to confront or deal with that are dark or heavy or very emotional and intense, and it is not easy. And there can be like big expressions of emotion with Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto in Capricorn. The dealing with or facing or confronting of intense family karma, the energies of events in the family that have history that are somehow coming to a head. There's also a sense of having to confront or face and survive or work through intensity and crisis that often comes up under Mars opposite Pluto. Also, just eruptive conflicts that you would rather not deal with. And how do we handle conflicts or power struggles? Those are also Mars Pluto dynamics. Well, we're going to be speaking a lot more about Mars Pluto as we get closer to that transit. So for today, what I want to do, after just kind of briefly bringing Mars Pluto into our awareness, is to look at the house placements by horoscope. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the chart on the screen, and I'm going to move. Let's get Mars back into a little opposition here. And we're going to put Aries on the ascendant. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the house placements. So if you are an Aries rising, this will apply to you. And then every sign afterward, I'll go in order, and I'm just going to talk about the dichotomy between the houses briefly so that you have some awareness of where this very strong energy is expressing itself in your chart. I recommend listening to your rising sign because that will correspond with the whole sign house placements of your birth chart, which means this is where the actual transits are happening in your birth chart by whole sign houses in rising sign fashion. So in other words, if you use a modern quadrant-based house system like Placidus or something else, your chart may not be perfectly aligned with this, but it will be the closest if you use whole sign houses, which of course I teach and use in my practice. So for me, this is where you'll find it in your whole sign house chart. That is the oldest version of house system that we have, and the house system still used in India today. So I recommend people, take a look at your whole sign house placements anyway. But so you could also listen for your sun sign if you prefer listening to sun sign horoscopes every month. It's really up to you. Anyway, let's now take a look. So Mars opposite Pluto, and I'm just going to draw the arrows kind of both ways. For Aries, it's across the 10th and the 4th house, which will activate across the house associated with work, profession, trade, craft, mastery, notoriety, public reputation in the 10th house, and home, family, roots, foundations, the living environment, your home or property in the 4th house. This can mean that there is a pretty strong split between things like public and private life, inner and outer life, work and home and family, and the tensions will express across these two houses very powerfully during this opposition. And then remember, for Aries, the whole focus of much of the Mars retrograde will be in that house of home and family. So keep those things in mind as this transit is building by the beginning of November. That's the point. All right, let's move forward to Taurus. And again, I'm just doing this very briefly so that we have some touchstones here that we can start thinking about and meditating on. So for Tauruses, we are looking at, I drew my arrow in the wrong direction here. Let me do this over. All right. So for Tauruses, we're looking at the 9th and 3rd houses being active. These houses are like liminal spaces. It makes them very hard to describe. The 9th house is a place of our philosophy, our beliefs, our higher mind, and the development of our understanding of reality or our life philosophy. It's also about expanding our horizons through travel abroad or foreign countries. And the third house is mostly about our local environment and the kind of culture that we live in or are raised in, as well as the everyday environment that we live in, and our everyday mind and emotions. So you think about the ninth in some ways as the higher mind and the third as the everyday mind. And neither is better than another. Higher does not mean better in this case. It's sort of like here's my local sphere, here's my local culture, here's my local mindset, here's my everyday world, and here's the world of higher thoughts and beliefs and philosophies and understanding and wisdom that also shape and inform how I live and the direction my life takes. So for Tauruses, there's something like a great culmination of learning and processing that may have a connection to local environment and family history, as well as the continued evolution of your philosophy and understanding of life itself. I would watch for things like travel, siblings, short journeys, the local environment, things like communication and your mindset, learning, philosophy, beliefs, all in a process of culmination. This is also a place where something like a crossroads is coming for you mentally, emotionally, and philosophically. Powerful moment for Tauruses. All right, let's go forward to Geminis. So for Geminis, we look at this across the second and eighth house axis. The place that is associated with your values and possessions and resources, what you are cultivating, building, and developing, whether it's a skill set or whether it's money, in the second house, and the eighth house, which is where you share in resources with other people, where there are karmic debts, exchanges, obligations, blessings, benefits, and also debts or penalties. And so the opposition here is creating a kind of a moment of crisis and transformation, you could say, or catharsis, confrontation, maybe power, conflict, struggle, power struggle or conflict with respect to resources, relationships, and the division of assets and resources and how things are balancing out between what you have and what other people have, or what you owe or what you are owed, and some kind of a moment of needing to confront something with respect to things like resources and relationships. Let's go forward to Cancer rising, where we see the Mars-Pluto dynamic across the first and seventh houses. Here, we see the topics of self and other, or individual essence and the need for relational connection. How do we stay true to ourselves while also moving through a moment of powerful transformation in our relationships? This is potentially the kind of this is potentially the image of a power struggle or a conflict in relationship that can't be avoided. It has to be faced directly. It's also about the kinds of transformations that are occurring for you both personally and relationally. It could have something to do with your family history, could have something to do with your body or your health, could have something to do with marriage or close intimate friendships or personal connections. But this is a moment of transformation for you personally and relationally that is happening in a very loud way around this transit again. And then remember, for Cancers, this ongoing exploration of identity and family history and your emotional needs and your health will continue as Mars retrogrades in your first house. All right, let's go on to Leo. So for Leo, we see this transit across the 6th and 12th houses. These are very powerful houses that often speak to some of the more difficult things we carry. This, in other words, points to a moment of pretty significant personal transformation. We say that because Mars is also going to enter your first house, where it will turn retrograde in not too long from now. Well, it's like into December. It turns retrograde, and then all of a sudden, we are looking at a process of personal revision and of sometimes a deepening of how you relate to or utilize willpower and courage and determination and assertiveness. If you need to chill out on those things because you're overly aggressive, assertive, bossy, domineering, you might be getting some feedback that you need to make room for other people. On the other hand, it could be that you need to be more assertive and brave, and you'll find that there will be reason or cause to do so. And that all might be getting started right now under this transit. The idea that there is a kind of crucible or confrontation with difficult forces, difficult people, need for big emotional breakthroughs is indicated by this opposition in the 6th and the 12th, especially given that Mars is then going to enter your first house and turn retrograde. So the things you are confronting from unconscious spaces that come up right now will be a continued part of personal growth and evolution in the next couple of months. All right, let's go forward to Virgo, where we see Mars and Pluto across the 5th and 11th houses. So with these two placements, we're looking at the house that is all about groups and allies, friends and benefactors, our aspirations, and the people or resources we connect with that aid us in the successful completion of our goals, of our ambitions and dreams. And then we have the 5th house, which is about personal creative fulfillment and happiness, and just that general feeling of being satisfied. And finding happiness and pleasure and creative fulfillment is a huge part of what the 5th house is all about. So right now we see a kind of crossroads for Virgos between the desire to belong or fit in, or maybe some level of drama or crisis or conflict with friends. And on the other hand, a need to be true to ourselves creatively. Like, one of the reasons that we often have trouble with friends or groups or communities or allies or colleagues is because on one level, we need other people. And on another level, if we are too identified or try to conform or fit in too much, we will end up compromising something of our own creative or individual essence. And so the Mars-Pluto dichotomy for Virgos probably has something to do with how uncomfortable it can be to stand out or to be different. Or it can be about which friendships are good ones and which ones are not so good, especially when it comes to the fulfillment of your creative essence and desires. Okay, so let us continue. Whoops, I am just all over the place here. Here we go. So Libras are next. And we have Mars opposite Pluto across the 10th and the 4th. Same thing as we had for Aries. So we're talking about a growing tension between the workplace, your public life, the kind of work you do in the world, and the emotional convictions you have, and ongoing energies of transformation and death and rebirth that are taking place around home, family, and your living environment, or your base or foundation. So this is a very strong moment of ongoing change within home, family, relationships, and also the workplace. There is something like a moment of choice, or even a crossroads between the obligations or priorities you have in these two areas of life. It's always a question for Libras of how to balance things, but the Mars-Pluto dynamic may suggest that you have to make a choice, that you are confronted with something that makes it, you have to make a judgment, and it has to be, it's not bad if that judgment is rooted in your own needs as well. I see ongoing changes for Libras in the professional domain through the upcoming Mars retrograde that will spend a lot of its time in Cancer as well. All right, so for Scorpios, we are now taking the Mars-Pluto dynamic across the 3rd and the 9th and just reversing it from what Tauruses have. And so this is a moment of, again, great philosophical transformation, spiritual transformation. Your mind is changing. Your beliefs are changing. As things have come up around you and in your environment, your everyday life is being impacted dramatically by ongoing change. Your philosophy, your understanding, your pursuit of truth is also being asked to evolve somehow. This is really important since the Mars retrograde will spend a long time in your 9th house, where there will be an ongoing opportunity for philosophical and spiritual refinement or continued learning of some kind. All right, so let's go on to Sagittarius. So for Sagittarius, just like Gemini, we've got these two planets across the 2nd and 8th. I look at this as a time where the potential for emotional coercion or manipulation in relationships with what is owed or what you feel obligated to, how you feel obligated to other people, and also what other people hold over you is going through. You're having to face something right now. Like if someone's taking advantage of you, this is the time where you say no more. If someone is trying to use you or is trying to coerce or manipulate somehow emotionally and take something from you, this is where you have to say no. On the other hand, you may have to look at yourself in the mirror if you are someone who has been maybe taking advantage of someone or not recognizing or honoring the extent to which someone has played an important role in your life. And it might be a time to give back, not just out of guilt, but to make it right, to make things whole and to make things reciprocal. But the give and take, the exchange of value and energy and love is being explored here. And if there are things that have been very unequal and unfair, you will certainly be looking at those things right now. So also just a point of transformation around things like money and finances. Now for Capricorns, we are looking at the placement of Mars and Pluto across the 1st and the 7th again. And now we're talking about the potential for some dramatic reconfiguring of your relationships. Mars in Cancer presents the opportunity for ongoing and somewhat dramatic transformation in intimate relationships, as well as the connection between intimate relationships and family or family background or family planning and organization. And so this opposition to Pluto in the 1st speaks to the culmination of a long process of personal death and rebirth that you've been going through all the way back to 2008. And Mars is now bringing this final moment of catharsis with respect to that personal transformation. And it is doing so through, kind of heated, charged emotional dynamics in relationships that may also be tied into family or ancestral karma and things like that. Let's move on to Aquarius, where we find the Mars-Pluto dynamic again across the 12th and the 6th, with Pluto about to enter your 1st house. Major moment of personal death and rebirth that is coming, that has already been in process over the past year and a half. We have seen Pluto enter Aquarius and dip its toes in and pop back out, and then dip its toes in and pop back out, and now it's coming to stay. This Mars-Pluto opposition therefore speaks to, I would think, the real initiation of the Pluto in the 1st house experience for Aquarians, which is all about a long, slow, steady process of death and rebirth. This process may come cathartically through events related to your health or your mental or emotional well-being. And with Mars turning retrograde in your 7th house, I wouldn't be surprised if this moment of personal transformation that is coming through Pluto's entrance into your 1st is also jump-started by the kinds of conflicts or the value of the kinds of conflicts or power struggles emerging in relationships in the next couple of months. The reason I say this is not to scare you that everything's, going to be bad in relationships. It's just that Mars turning retrograde in that 7th house does suggest that, a time of looking at power dynamics in relationships is intimately connected to this upcoming moment of personal transformation described by Pluto entering your 1st house. So finally, we get Pisces, and here we have Pluto and Mars again across the 5th and the 11th, just as we did for Virgo. With a lot of the Mars retrograde coming up in your 5th house, I wonder for a lot of people out there who are Pisces rising, if there isn't some kind of question about parenting and community or about children and community dynamics, because this Mars retrograde that will spend a lot of time in Cancer in the 5th can have a lot to do with your kids. And it can have a lot to do with parenting. And then the opposition to Pluto implies that some of that may be taking place within questions about community groups and greater social connections. So I just wonder if that isn't part of what's coming for Pisceans, those of you who are parents. Pregnancy could be coming for some Pisceans, but also there's a lot of Pisceans, of course, who aren't parents, who don't identify as parents, in which case I wonder about the need for healthy emotional outlets. Healthy emotional outlets that can allow you to work with deep, strong feelings and connect to them positively and meaningfully. And that in order to do that, you may need to look at how much you repress or how much you hold inside based on the need to fit in or not um, fall out of some kind of hierarchy or ranking socially. I mean, the way that I'm thinking about this is that, Mars retrograde in the fifth house is looking for healthy forms of strong emotional expression and emotional satisfaction and happiness that comes through strong Mars-like expressions. But if you're worried about disrupting the social order or disrupting your place or position or power or rank, Pluto and Capricorn in the 11th, then it's possible that you're dealing with repression, or that you're dealing with holding yourself back in some ways that you really shouldn't do any longer. I suspect that's also why Saturn is finishing up in your first house in the next year, and that this Mars retrograde with Saturn in your first also speaks to looking at whatever ways in which you're inhibited, or whatever ways in which you feel like you're not being yourself, and how are you holding yourself back, or what forces or powers socially are you allowing to kind of hem you in or restrict you in some ways. And then you have to look at that and say, well, I'm allowing this to happen because I keep participating with this particular kind of social life or scene, or these are the people that I keep trying to please or whatever. So those are some of the things that come to my mind for Pisces. All right. Well, anyway, we conclude here. And the point of this exercise was, again, just to remind you of those whole sign house topics so that you can start thinking about the way in which those topics are already starting to be activated. Because what we don't want is to come up to a Mars-Pluto opposition and just be blindsided by how powerful it is. So you can start thinking about these topics. And even if it's not these particular topics, but something closely related to the houses, and you're seeing it slightly differently, that's good. The hope is that if I don't hit on the right themes, that I at least stimulate the right areas of the chart so that you can see them in the way that they're most applicable for you. So on that note, we will end here. And after I sign off, there is an informational video about the upcoming Year 1 program. Remember, you have only until Friday to take advantage of that pre-registration sale. There's also need-based tuition for anyone who could use the sliding scale because you're on a limited or fixed income. Be sure to check that out. And you'll learn all about the program next after I sign off. All right, we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the Year 1 program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall, and I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's are some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything that you need to know how to access the course is there. And you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year. It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling, because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November, and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities. And then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. It's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away and will study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all of the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages, or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page, on the year one page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto is moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These Aries signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying, and I hope to see some of you in class soon.